All right, here we go. So to start off class, we are asking the question, what events led to the American Revolution? We're naming 2 events and their significance. Rachel, these are your classmates. Everyone say hi. Hi, we miss you. Okay. So that's what we're doing. You can see here that it says what events led to the American Revolution, name 2 and their significance. So, girls, what are some events that led to the American Revolution? Name one, Sine. The Stamp Act, excellent. What is the significance of the Stamp Act?
They taxed all people in the colonies so we weren't happy because they were receiving benefits from the tax.
Excellent, right? Tax all paper goods. It was the first direct tax on the colonies. And also, the colonists were upset because the colonies were being taxed without representation in Parliament. Excellent. What else, girls? What else? Go ahead, Zoe. Go ahead, Zoe.
So because of the Stamp Act, colonists were upset, so they did the Boston Massacre, and then
So
that wrong.
no, you're not wrong because that did happen after. It happened afterwards. You're right. What happened was they were mad about the Stamp Act, so they were protesting, and they were in the town square. Because you're right, all the colonists were in the town square, and they had a big riot going on. Right, they were protesting, and a British soldier accidentally fired his weapon, and then gunfire breaks out, and 5 colonists were shot, 3 were killed, 2 were wounded. Right, and then this was a factor that led to the American Revolution because it riled up the colonies and united them against Great Britain. So great. So the Boston Massacre. What else? What else? Go ahead, Claire. Boston Tea Party, right? Because that was a direct response to the Townshend Acts and the Boston Tea Party. I'm sorry, the Boston Massacre. What else? Anything else? All right, girls. What about the Intolerable Acts? The Intolerable Act. Do you guys remember that one? Go ahead, Sinead.
The British people were like really tired of what the colonists were doing, and they made like all the soldiers being housed with them.
In which colony?
In Boston.
Massachusetts, right? Massachusetts, excellent. And the Massachusetts Bay Colony, good. So what happened was all these events, a lot of them are happening in Boston, and Boston's fed up. Boston has the Boston Tea Party, and Great Britain says, that's it, that's the end. You no longer have self-rule. And also we are quartering troops there to make sure you guys don't do this stuff again, right? And that was kind of like the last straw. So then what happens is, very good. So I just posted that. So that's looks like a conversation in Teams. You guys, it's not an assignment, it's just a post. Excellent. So what happens is now, Boston Tea Party takes place, the intolerable acts are passed. We send the First Continental Congress to go, and delegates from each state sends a representative. So, Boston or Massachusetts sends a delegate from Massachusetts. We get a delegate from Virginia. We have a delegate in Philadelphia because the meeting is being held in Philadelphia. Everyone comes together to meet. This is called the First Continental Congress, right? This is called the First Continental Congress. They come to meet, figure out what they're going to do. They went to ask the king. They said, King George, we have a couple of requests. We are willing to move forward and resolve these issues. They send delegates to the king to say, these are our declaration of resolve. We are declaring resolves that need to be made in order to move forward with this political relationship. One of them being repealing the Intolerable Acts. I said we must repeal the Intolerable Acts. We must restore self-rule in Great Britain, and we have to open up the Boston Harbor again. King George says, yeah, no, that's not going to happen. So what King George does is he says no. So then what happens? The First Continental Congress didn't really do anything, but it kind of said to the colonies, let's make up our minds. He's not willing to work with us. We have no other choice. We have to rebel. So during the Second Continental Congress, right, they call a second meeting. They had a first meeting, didn't get the outcome they wanted, so they're holding a second meeting. And in this second meeting, two very important things happened. And can you name one of them? Two very important things happened at the Second Continental Congress. Maybe we didn't get there in our notes yet. It looks like Zoe has something. Go ahead.
Organized Continental Army named George Washington as their leader.
Excellent, right? We organized the Continental Army. This is the first army that is organized by the states. This is their first official formal army that is organized by the central government. They formed the Continental Army. And then they named George Washington as the commander of this Continental Army. Girls, why are they making an army? What are they planning to do?
Rebel.
They're planning to rebel. They are planning to go to war. Okay? So take out your workbooks. Take out your workbooks. It's going to be this one, this workbook. If you don't have it, just email me and I will scan you over the copies. We are going to be looking at pages 15 through 18. You can use your notes and you can work with a partner. So just turn to the person next to you. I don't want you like getting crazy and like sitting all next to people, but like you two, all you would do is face your desks towards each other. And then back there, you girls could turn around sideways, not all the way around, but turn sideways to face each other, but also include more in the conversation. Or wait, yeah. So you two, you turn around, you turn around, you will join them by sitting in that chair. You two turn around and face, you two turn, you two, and then what we'll do here is, you two are going to two, you three, you two, if you could just like fix your desks, so back up a little bit. Girls in the back, distance a little, like Morgan, can you push yourself back a little bit more towards the back of the room? All right, cool. Can you two separate a little bit more? There should be at least 3 tile squares between your feet and the feet for the person across from you. All right, so 15 through 18. Pages 15 through 18. Today, could you just move back a little bit? I'm sorry, so I just want to make sure that we're not too close. And then you can move back a little bit. No, page 15 through 18.
Okay. So the causes and that's on the causes and
Oh, I'm sorry, I have you get the video. All right, Rachel, we are doing pages 15 through 18 in your copybook. Okay, you guys can have Rachel in your group. She's not here, but Rachel, you can either turn this off and then just resume, or you can be a part of the discussion while the girls here are looking at the section. Okay. There you go. All right, she's part of your discussion. There you go. She's not there. It's just a recording. So, but yeah, to make sure we're genuine conversation about the concept. Right?
Yeah. So the causes and effects of the American Revolution.
Yeah, we should do the Stamp Act because like the cause would be the Stamp Act. We can figure out the impact. Okay, so I just say Stamp Act as one of the causes. And then that leads to
Right, girls, so the first one should be relatively easy because we have
like
because we
taxing
just
on
already
paper
class, some of the inspirations
As
of the
like the second
revolution.
for the effect of the
Oh,
Stamp
the
Act
effect
would
of the
be
Stamp Act.
tax on
Tax
paper
on
goods.
goods.
We just did the first one, stamp facts and tax on paper goods. We can do the Virginia Declaration of Rights.
Does anybody have their coffee book out when I take their notes? Jasmine, do you have your notes in your coffee book? How do you take them? You type them? Do you write them? You write this. You're just not right.
What would be the facts?
All men are
Stating that men
are all created equal. Stating that men are created equal.
Yeah. Virginia Declaration of Rights. And then we can do either the Confederations or one of the colonies.
Maybe the second one?
Yeah, the continents.
So, yes, so Maya asked an important question. She asked what happened with the Native Americans when the colonies came. So originally, the Native Americans were there, and the colonies, they obviously didn't get along with the Native Americans, so they ended up pushing them further west. So they would push them out of their own territory and push them west, ultimately taking over the land, taking over the area. So what happens is we're going to see conflict with Native Americans. So they formed the New England Confederation. You're going to read about that in just a moment, right? They're going to form the New England Confederation. And the colonies get together and basically unite and say that they're going to make sure that they protect themselves and one another from Native Americans in the land. And also, the natives are actually going to also form a confederation. And a confederation is an alliance. So yes, the Native Americans ultimately were pushed further and further west, which is why we see a lot of Native American reserves in the Midwest of the country. Go ahead.
So the Confederation caused the colonies and the natives work together,
What was that?
did the Confederation cause the natives work together among themselves or within the colonies?
For the Iroquois?
Yes.
The Iroquois, they were working together. But, yes. But then ultimately, we'll see later on that the Native Americans are pushed out of their lands. So girls, why don't we take a look at the road to independence here, the road to independence. Okay, that's page 16. Let's take a look at the road to independence. The American colonies first took steps towards unity in 1643 with the creation of the New England Confederation. This was formed between the Plymouth, Connecticut, Massachusetts Bay, and New Haven colonies to defend themselves against Native Americans and nearby Dutch colonies as well. So what was the purpose of the first New England Confederation? Remember, the first little text box question on this page. What was the purpose of this confederation? Go ahead, Morgan.
To defend themselves against Native Americans and nearby Dutch colonies.
Excellent. To protect themselves against Native Americans and Dutch colonies. To protect themselves against Native American and Dutch colonies. That is your answer to the first question on that page. Later, during the French and Indian War, the British government asked the colonies to sign a treaty with the Iroquois Confederation. This is a powerful alliance of 6 Native American nations. They would support the British to defeat the French. They said, listen, let's create a treaty, let's create an alliance. The French and Indian War is going on. they basically asked Native Americans to be on their side for this war, to fight the French. Okay? So, after that, we see the Albany Plan of Union. This was inspired, or not inspired, this was proposed by Benjamin Franklin, and he called for a council of representatives that would be appointed by the colonies, like their little governments, and a president general who was appointed by the king. This plan of union ended up not really going far until it helped inspire the Constitution, because we know that Benjamin Franklin was involved in that as the founding father of our nation. By the mid-1700s, there were more reasons for the colonies to unify or to come together. We're going to see more reasons for the colonies to come together and unite with one another. Basically, the colonists were angry because they were being taxed, right, without representation. That was the entire idea. They were being taxed without representation in Parliament. That will answer your next text box question, which says, why did the American colonists feel that the new taxes were unfair? It's because they weren't represented in Parliament. What is Parliament? What is Parliament? Okay, Zoe.
I want to say it's the British government.
Excellent. It is the British government. It is the part of Britain's government that makes the laws. It's their law-making body. So in Parliament, they're saying we need tighter control of the colonies. We are broke after the French and Indian War. Let's create taxes to get money and generate money from the colonies. Parliament came up with the idea to tax the colonists. Now, do you think that if there was a member from each colony in Parliament, do you think that would have gotten passed? No, because they wouldn't vote for that. They wouldn't vote for more of their money being taken away. So they were angry because they were not represented in Parliament, and Parliament was making laws to tax them. Right? That's not how it's supposed to work. No taxation without what? Representation. Excellent. So then we see the Stamp Act, the first attempt to tax the colonies directly. It was repealed. And then we have new taxes were soon imposed in its place. Those are the Townshend Acts. Then we're going to see the Boston Massacre. All the colonies start talking about it with each other. They're spreading that painting. They're spreading the word. And then we are going to see that the Boston Tea Party takes place. The Boston Tea Party takes place in 1773, and the king and Parliament decide to punish the colonies with what piece of legislation, girls? What was it called? Can't even deal with it, can't even tolerate it. What's it called, Morgan? The Intolerable Acts. Excellent. It ended self-rule in Britain, in Boston, and also they quartered British troops in their homes, meaning that the British were there to enforce the laws, but in order to be there, they needed somewhere to stay. So where did they stay? Colonists were forced to have them in their homes. Right? That would be like President Trump saying, okay, we are sending 3,000 troops to Philadelphia, and Philadelphians, you are responsible for housing them and feeding them. Right? Quartering of troops. Awesome. So, moving on, Continental Congresses. The Continental Congresses are basically just the meetings that we had before the Revolution. So the first Continental Congress, right, because now we're on page 17, the first Continental Congress says that despite the Intolerable Acts, the colonies said, you know what, I think we can get somewhere with Great Britain. I think we can get somewhere with King George. So what do? They have the first Continental Congress, they decide this is what we're going to do. We are going to send delegates, right, or representatives, kind of, delegates from a couple colonies to represent the colonies, to represent our new union. We are going to send them with the Declaration of Resolve to King George. Basically, the Declaration of Resolve says, listen, we are willing to move past this. We are willing to repair this relationship between the colonies and Great Britain. But first, before anything else, we have to repeal the Intolerable Acts. They're not fair. They are a threat to our government. They are a threat to our freedom. We have to first repeal the Intolerable Acts. What does King George say? Sure, let's do it, or no?
No.
Says no. So after that, okay, we have the first Continental Congress, which met in Philadelphia, okay? Doesn't work out. If one meeting doesn't work out, you don't get the outcome you want, you need a second meeting, right? So what do they call for? What happens next? The second Continental Congress, right? So they meet again. But this time they have a new agenda. They're no longer looking to repair the relationship with Great Britain, right? They tried. King George said no. Now this means war. So now they're preparing for the American Revolution. What is one thing, did anybody get that far? Anybody get that far? Maybe some of us did. Read the Second Continental Congress. It says, after their demands were rejected, the colonies met in the Second Continental Congress. A second general meeting where delegates organized the Continental Army. This is the first time that we're going to see the nation having a national army, right? A central army. It's called the Continental Army. Okay, so they're preparing for war. They're assembling an army. Once a last petition to the king was rejected, Congress organized as a government and they prepared for war. They were going to war to achieve independence from Great Britain, to be a sovereign nation. Thomas Paine authored a pamphlet called Common Sense, which basically riled up the colonies and said, listen, at this point, after Bostonians were killed in the streets, after we were taxed without our permission, and now that our rights are being violated, we have no choice but to go to war. It is only common sense to seek independence from Great Britain. That's what Thomas Paine's Common Sense is all about. He said that. That was sent throughout the colonies to kind of rile everybody up. Like, let's go. This is what we need to do, and we need to all be on one team. We need to be unified. So, the Second Continental Congress, they named George Washington as their commander. They're ready for war. So what did the Second Continental Congress prepare for once the king rejected their last petition, everyone? Going to war for independence, right? That should be your answer right there. Okay, the Declaration of Independence, we're looking at the Virginia Declaration of Rights. Thomas Jefferson on July 2nd, delegates at the Continental Congress, they passed a resolution to declare independence. Virginia delegate Thomas Jefferson is from Virginia, he wrote most of the resolution. And he looked back on the Virginia Declaration of Rights. The Virginia Declaration of Rights was issued by the Virginia House of Burgesses. That's basically their lawmaking body in Virginia. Because remember, girls, each state has its own government as well. So they're coming up with ideas in their own state. They have their own rules and their own laws because the colonies are all different from one another. This is now, this right now is the biggest time that they come together. So they're looking at Virginia's Declaration of Rights, which was issued by their government, and it said, all men are by nature equally free and independent, and they have certain inherent rights. This sounds familiar, right? Who does it sound like? Who does it sound like? It's in here. His name. Sounds like John Locke, right? My guy. Sounds like John Locke. Sounds like his natural rights theory, that all men are born with natural rights that cannot be violated. These rights are life, liberty, and property. So basically, Thomas Jefferson, when he was writing the Declaration of Independence, he was looking back on these former documents and these former theories to shape the document. They looked at, the unalienable rights that cannot be violated and also the consent of the governed, drafted this up, and before we knew it, they were declaring independence. Any questions? Go ahead.
What's consent of the governed meaning?
Yeah, so consent of the governed, it basically means that the people, consent of the governed, what does consent mean? The word consent, what's a synonym for consent? Permission, excellent. So consent of the governed is a theory of John Locke's. Okay? So this is looking at, so consent means permission. Girls, who is being governed? The who? Who's being governed? The people. Did we agree for Great Britain? Did we at this point, when we're about to revolt, do we still acknowledge King George as our leader? No, we do not. King George is not our leader. Why? He does not have our consent. Who are we? We are the governed. We are the people. We do not give him consent. In order for a leader or a government, official, in order for their power to be legitimate, they have to be seen as right and proper, right? They have to be seen as right and proper by the people that they are governed by, because the people are the source of government authority. Now, when we form our social contracts, we come together and we say, yes, we are agreeing to give up some of our rights for protection from the government. And only for that. We give our consent to be governed by this government agency or this government body, because they're going to in turn protect us. Is that what was going on in Great Britain when the colonies wanted to revolt? No, they did not. No, so basically at this point, King George lost the consent of the governed, and now we were looking to replace the government because we were not being protected. That is how the idea of the consent of the governed plays into this role.
So, to answer this question, what do the state constitutions have in common? They all wanted to revolt against Great Britain.
Every colony wanted to revolt, but we're looking specifically at the constitutions, because we have to remember that before the Declaration of Independence, before the Constitution was ratified, which means passed, every state had its own government and every state had its own rules. Right? Remember, we had different kinds of colonies and they all ran themselves a little bit differently, but also a little bit the same. Well, in this situation, the state constitutions, all 13 of them had decided, let's write down the rules that we want in our colony. Let's write down the constitutions. So all 3 of them adopted written constitutions of their own, not from the national government, but from their own. They included ideas about republicanism that soon influenced the U.S. Constitution. Every colony had voting rights, but they were different. And now today, every state has different election laws, right? Voting rights here, though, they varied, meaning that only certain people in certain colonies could vote, typically all white men owning property. And all the constitutions established legislatures of elected officials, as well as judicial and executive branches, which limited the powers of the legislative and the executive branches. Now, what is a legislature? Go ahead, Morgan.
It has something to do in correlation with making laws.
Making laws, right? A legislature is a law-making body. Now, when I say a law-making body, do I just mean a human being that makes all the laws? I do not. I do not. If I'm talking about St. Basil's student body, who am I talking about? Morgan? That would be the sisters across the street, right? That would be the board, right? The board, because they're the ones that make the decisions. If I'm talking about the student body of Basil's, though, the student body, I'm talking about every single one of you, every single sophomore, every single freshman, every single junior, and every single senior. Because together, all of you freshmen, all of you sophomores, juniors, seniors, and all of your friends, right? All of you guys, together, you make up SBA's student body. Okay? Now, body here is not a singular word, it's a collective noun. I sound like Mrs. Donowski right now, right? Body, in this sense, is a collective noun. We're not talking about one individual, we're talking about a larger group. A legislature is a legislative body. Meaning, person? A legislature is a group of people that do what? That do what? Make laws, right? It is a law-making body. And in this instance, in the colonies, right? They're coming together. So this body is made up of people from each of the colonies, right? This lawmaking body, this body is comprised of or made up of representatives that were elected, so elected representatives from the colonies. If you were elected, what does that mean? You won. That's you. You are the person that's going to play that role or be in that position. But how do you get there? Don't say campaign. How do you get there? People have to vote for you. When you vote, you are making a choice. To be elected means that you are chosen by the people to represent them. You are chosen by the people in your area to represent them when you're making laws, right? This way, every single person in every single colony, they may not agree entirely with what the representative says, but they selected him and he won the election and he was voted into office to make these laws that concern them. So this way, if we are going to vote on, if we're going to vote on a topic, each state feels like they had a say because they have representatives from each state to make says in the law-making body. Does that make sense? A little bit? Every state decided to create a legislature, and they decided to also create a executive branch and a judicial branch. So those are your answers for what did the state constitutions have in common. They all adopted written constitutions, and they set up legislative branches. They also set up executive branches and judicial branches. Do we have any questions about that? What time is it? Class over in 3 minutes? Where does it go? You come in and you sit down and then class is over. It's wild. Are there any questions on the next page? Yeah. No, they're not. Okay, I didn't even want you to do 18. Sorry about that. Any questions, guys? All right, put your desks back. You do not have homework tonight. Obviously, you'll be having virtual work tomorrow. I don't have time to take out anything that's like any PowerPoints. So we are going to continue with our lesson on. We're going to continue with our lesson on whatchamacallit, what day? Wednesday, all right? You'll have virtual work tomorrow. Take home your workbooks, girls. Take them home. Thank you, hon. Take home your workbooks. You might need them on Wednesday, so take them home. They're tiny, guys, so hopefully it's not that big of a problem. Thank you, girls, and I will come around to wipe down the desk, so if you could just pack up your stuff. Thank you.